Clean my toilet, you useless old man. Those words cost my son $15 million. My name is Victor Langford, and I just taught my Silicon Valley son the most expensive lesson of his life. For 4 years, I played the role of a simple nighttime security guard, watching my own son lie to his colleagues about me being dead. He was so ashamed of his lowly father that he'd take the long way around the lobby to avoid me. What Austin didn't know was that I owned the very building where he worked, and every humiliating word he spoke was about to cost him everything. While his meta friends laughed at me checking badges at 2 a.m., I stayed perfectly calm because I knew something they didn't. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a father's love turned into the ultimate lesson about respect. 4 years ago, when my wife Clara died from pancreatic cancer, I made a promise at her hospital bed. I told her I'd find a way to reconnect with our son Austin, no matter what it took. See, Austin had been drifting away from us for years. After Stanford Graduate School of Business, after landing his job at Meta, after moving to his fancy Marina District penthouse, he started acting like we didn't exist. The final straw came at Clara's funeral. Austin showed up in his custom Brioni suit, shook hands with mourners like a celebrity, and left after 15 minutes. He told people he had an emergency board call at his own mother's funeral. That night, I sat in our empty house in Daly City, looking through old photo albums, pictures of me working double shifts as a longshoreman to pay his Stanford tuition, $88,000 a year, pictures of Clara pawning her mother's ring to cover his semester abroad in Barcelona, pictures of us eating canned tuna while he posted Instagram photos from Michelin-starred restaurants. The medical bills from Clara's treatment totaled $420,000. We never asked Austin for help. We just quietly drained our savings and sold everything we could. But here's what Austin never knew and what I never told him. While I was working those double shifts, I was also building something massive. You see, I wasn't just a dock worker and part-time security guard like he thought. I was Victor Langford, founder and majority owner of Langford Properties. We owned 42 buildings across the Bay Area, worth $4.1 billion. That little night security job, it was just my cover. After the funeral, I made a decision. I was going to get close to my son again, but not by begging for his attention or trying to impress him with money. I wanted to see who he really was when he thought nobody was watching. So, I applied for the overnight security position at One Hacker Way, the Meta building where Austin worked as a vice president, making $1.2 million a year plus stock options. The irony? I owned the building. The security company contracted their services through one of my subsidiary firms. So, technically, I hired myself to watch my own son. For 4 years, I sat at that front desk from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. For 4 years, I checked badges and monitored cameras on the floor where Austin had his glass-walled office. For 4 years, I watched him walk past me every morning without a word of recognition. But it got worse. Austin started telling his colleagues that his father was dead. I heard him say it during a late-night Slack call when I was doing my rounds. My old man, he died years ago. Car crash, working-class guy, never amounted to much. Standing there in my Navy uniform, invisible to my own son, I felt something break inside me. The cruel part was how his Meta buddies would sometimes joke about the old security guard right in front of me. They'd leave Red Bull cans on the desk on purpose, ask me to watch their MacBooks while they grabbed coffee, treat me like furniture. Austin would laugh along, never knowing they were humiliating his own father. But I kept my promise to Clara. I stayed close. I observed. I learned exactly who my son had become. The breaking point came last month on October 22nd. Austin invited his colleagues to a 30th birthday party at his penthouse, a celebration for his promotion to Senior VP of Product. The invitation was open on his laptop when I did my nightly patrol. I wasn't invited, of course, but somehow I had a feeling I'd end up there anyway. The morning of October 22nd, I stood in my bedroom looking at myself in the mirror. 75 years old, gray beard, scarred hands, shoulders bent from 4 years of leaning over that security console. What was I really doing? Was this elaborate charade worth losing what little relationship I had left with my son? The truth is, staying silent was killing me. Literally, my doctor had prescribed blood pressure medication 8 months earlier. The stress of watching my son dismiss everything I'd worked for, everything Clara and I had sacrificed, was eating me alive. I'd started having panic attacks in the parking garage, 5-minute episodes where I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. The janitor found me there once, hyperventilating. She asked if I needed an ambulance. I told her I was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was dying inside, one humiliation at a time. The therapist I'd been seeing, Dr. Linda Chen, $220 a session, told me I was experiencing complicated grief with abandonment trauma. She said I was clinging to a relationship that might not exist anymore. "Victor," she said during our last session, "you can't force someone to respect you, especially not through deception." She was right. But she didn't understand something crucial. This wasn't about forcing respect. This was about seeing my son's true character. And what I discovered was devastating. Austin had become exactly the kind of person Clara and I had hoped he'd never become: entitled, cruel, ashamed of his roots. He'd traded his family's love for social status, and he didn't even realize what he'd lost. The stakes were higher than my own pain, though. See, I'd been watching Austin's behavior with other people too. How he treated baristas, how he spoke to receptionists, how he dismissed anyone he considered beneath him. Last month, I watched him fire a pregnant engineer for not being a culture fit in front of the entire team. "Maybe next time you'll move faster," he said. That night, I went home and pulled out my will. $15 million earmarked for Austin. Money I'd set aside to secure his future, to make sure he'd never struggle like Clara and I had. But watching him fire that woman, I realized something terrible. This money wouldn't help Austin. It would just enable more cruelty, more entitlement. It would make him worse. My estate attorney, Rebecca Stein, had warned me about this years ago. Wealth without character is dangerous, Victor. Make sure your son earns this inheritance. Now I understood what she meant. Austin hadn't earned anything. He'd been given every advantage, the best education, the best connections, the best opportunities, and he'd used those gifts to become someone I barely recognized. The real stake wasn't just our relationship. It was Austin's soul. If I stayed silent, if I kept playing this role, I'd be complicit in his transformation into someone Clara would be ashamed to call her son. Every day I watched him humiliate other people, I became part of the problem. But confronting him meant risking everything. It meant destroying the careful distance we'd maintained, the polite fiction that our relationship still existed. It meant potentially losing him forever. There was something else, though, something that made this moment inevitable. Last week, I'd overheard Austin on a phone call with his girlfriend. They were planning to move to London next year, a transfer to Meta's European AI lab. "I can't wait to get out of this city," he said, away from all the reminders. He was planning to leave permanently without even saying goodbye. That's when I realized the relationship I'd been trying to preserve was already dead. I'd been clinging to a ghost, enabling a stranger who wore my son's face. The birthday party was my last chance. My final opportunity to either save Austin from himself or accept that the son I loved was gone forever. Standing in that bathroom mirror, I made my decision. I couldn't save our relationship, but maybe, just maybe, I could save his character, even if it cost me $15 million. Even if it cost me everything. I put on my security uniform one last time. But this time, I also slipped my $75,000 Patek Philippe under my sleeve. If tonight was going to be a showdown, I was going to be ready. The party was already in full swing when I arrived at Austin's Marina District penthouse. The building's doorman, Carlos, recognized me from my rounds. "Evening, Mr. Vic. You here for a call?" "Something like that," I said. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt like ascending to my own execution. I could hear the party through the door, laughter, electronic music, the sound of young millionaires celebrating their own genius. I knocked quietly. The door swung open, revealing a young influencer in designer clothes holding a champagne flute. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking confused. "I'm here to see Austin." "I'm the building's night security supervisor," she frowned. "Is there a problem with the apartment?" Before I could answer, Austin appeared behind her. For just a moment, our eyes met. I saw a flicker of something, surprise, maybe recognition, but it vanished instantly, replaced by irritation. "What are you doing here?" His voice was sharp, controlled, the same tone he used with difficult engineers. "Got a call about a motion sensor issue," I said calmly. "Tenant downstairs reported alarms going off." It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that would get me inside without questions. Austin's jaw tightened. He was trapped. Refusing security access could be a lease violation, and he knew it. Worse, his colleagues were watching. "Fine, but make it quick. We're hosting important guests." I stepped into the apartment, taking in the scene. 30 Meta executives and venture capitalists, all holding expensive glasses, all dressed in clothes that cost more than most people made in a month. The apartment itself was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Marble countertops, custom Danish furniture. Sarah Kim, a managing director I recognized from the office, approached Austin. "Everything okay?" "Just building security," Austin said dismissively. Old sensors in these converted buildings, always something acting up. The way he said old stung, like decay was inevitable, like things that had been around too long were just burdens to be managed. I pulled out my clipboard and headed toward the control panel. The conversation resumed around me, but I could feel the subtle shift in energy. My presence had reminded everyone that this glamorous world was built on a foundation of people they'd rather not see. "Austin, you really should complain to the landlord," said a man in a Patagonia vest. "Having security interrupt private events is completely inappropriate." "I'll definitely be calling tomorrow," Austin replied. "This kind of disruption is exactly why I'm looking forward to our London transfer." London transfer. So, it was official. I worked slowly by the panel, listening to their conversation. They were discussing stock refreshes, vacation homes in Tahoe, private school options for their children. The casual way they threw around numbers, $100,000 for a weekend getaway, $500,000 for a boat, was staggering. But it was their attitude that really got to me. The easy assumption that they deserved all of this. The complete absence of gratitude for the opportunities they'd been given. After 20 minutes, I emerged from the hallway. "All set," I announced. Austin barely looked up from his conversation. "Great. You can show yourself out." I started packing my clipboard, but slowly. Something was building in me, a pressure I'd been holding back for 4 years. "Actually," I said, "there's one more thing." The room went quiet. Austin turned, his face showing the first hint of real annoyance. "What now?" I met his eyes. "Your motion sensor in the master bedroom is reading funny. Might want to keep an eye on it." One of his colleagues, a thin man with perfect hair, laughed. "That's what you get with these old buildings, Austin. Old wiring, old problems." "Old problems," Austin repeated, looking directly at me. "That's exactly right." The insult was clear. I was the old problem. The reminder of a past he wanted to forget. "You know what they say," said another guest, a woman with diamond earrings that probably cost more than a car. "Some things just outlive their usefulness." More laughter. Austin smiled, not warmly, but with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd successfully distanced himself from something embarrassing. I stood there for a moment, clipboard in hand, watching my son laugh along with strangers who were mocking his own father. The son Clara had rocked to sleep every night. The son we'd driven to Stamford in our 15-year-old Civic because we couldn't afford anything newer. "Well," I said quietly, "I guess I should get back to work." "That would be best," Austin said. I walked toward the door, but paused at the threshold. "Nice apartment, by the way, $4.8 million, right? That's what these units go for." Austin looked surprised that I knew the number. "Something like that." "Good investment," I said. "Real estate in this building is very solid, very well managed." And with that, I left. But I'd planted the first seed, the first hint that maybe I knew more than they assumed. Walking toward the elevator, I could hear their conversation resume. Someone was making jokes about nosy security guards and knowing too much about everyone's business. But I also heard something else. I heard Austin ask Sarah Kim a question. How would he know what these units sell for? The first crack in his certainty. The first moment of doubt. As the elevator descended, I checked my watch under my sleeve. 10:12 p.m. The real show was just beginning. The next morning, I arrived at the building earlier than usual, 5:45 a.m., while the campus was still mostly empty. I had some phone calls to make, and I needed privacy. My first call was to Marcus Rivera, the head of security. Marcus had been with the company for 25 years, since before Austin even knew what Meta was. "Morning, Mr. Langford," he said, using my real title. "How did last night go?" "Exactly as expected," I said. "He's planning to transfer to London sooner than I thought." "I'm sorry, sir. I know how much you'd hoped things would be different." "Different doesn't begin to cover it, Marcus. I need you to do something for me. Tonight around 9 p.m., I want you to come up to the 32nd floor. Find an excuse. Fire drill check, whatever. Just be there when I need you." "Done. Anything else?" I hesitated. "Have the building's ownership documents ready. The originals." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He understood what that meant. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Langford?" "I've never been more sure about anything in my life." My second call was to Rebecca Stein, my estate attorney. She answered on the first ring. "Victor, it's quite early. I need you to prepare the will amendment we discussed, the one removing Austin from the inheritance." "Are you certain this is a $15 million decision?" "I'm certain. And Rebecca, I want you at 1 Hacker Way tonight, 32nd floor around 9:15. "Victor, what exactly are you planning?" "What I should have done 4 years ago. I'm going to show my son who his father really is." After hanging up, I sat in the security office, looking at the bank of monitors showing every floor. I could see Austin's empty office, the open space floor where I'd watched him humiliate so many people, the parking garage where I'd had those panic attacks. But today felt different. Today, I wasn't the broken old man hiding in stairwells. Today, I was Victor Langford, owner of 42 prime properties across California. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts: mayor's office, police chief, federal judges, governors, the kind of numbers you accumulate when you quietly own half the Bay Area skyline. But the number I really needed was already programmed: Langford Properties Management, the company that handled day-to-day operations for my buildings. At exactly 8 a.m., when business hours officially began, I made the call. "This is Victor Langford. I need to schedule an emergency building safety inspection for tonight." "Mr. Langford." "Of course, sir. What type of inspection?" "Full fire and safety review. 32nd floor specifically. I'll be conducting it personally." "Sir, should we notify the tenants?" I thought about Austin, probably sitting in his glass office right now, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. "No," I said, "this will be a surprise inspection." The morning passed slowly. I went through my usual routine, checking badges, walking the perimeter, monitoring cameras, but every mundane task felt different now. This was the last day I'd ever pretend to be someone I wasn't. Around lunchtime, I was doing rounds near Austin's floor when I overheard him on a conference call. "The London transfer is moving faster than expected," he was saying. "They want me there by January. I'll be running the entire European AI division personally. 3 months. In 3 months, he'd be gone forever, carrying his cruelty and entitlement to a new continent. Unless something changed tonight. I finished my shift at 6 a.m. the next day and went home to Daly City. I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, a custom chiton that cost more than Austin made in a month. Then I removed the Patek Philippe from its hiding place and put it on my wrist where it belonged. In the mirror, I looked like what I was, a billionaire real estate titan who'd built an empire from nothing. Tonight, my son was going to meet his real father, whether he liked it or not. I arrived at Austin's building at 8:45 p.m. wearing my security uniform over my chiton suit. The front desk was expecting me. "Evening, Mr. Vic," said the night guard, a young man who didn't know my true identity. "Back again?" "Emergency call," I said, holding up my master key card. "Tenant on 32 reported a major sensor failure." The elevator ride up felt like traveling through time. When the doors opened, I could already hear the party. It was bigger tonight. More voices, more laughter, more celebration of Austin's promotion and birthday. I knocked on the penthouse door. This time Austin himself answered. When he saw me, his face went through several expressions: surprise, annoyance, then something darker, embarrassment mixed with rage. "You've got to be kidding me," he said. Behind him, I could see the same crowd from last night, plus a dozen new faces. Sarah Kim was there along with several other Meta directors. I recognized at least 4 clients whose portfolios were worth billions. "Sorry to interrupt again," I said, "but we've got a serious alarm situation. The tenant below is reporting constant triggers." "This is ridiculous," Austin said loud enough for his guests to hear. 2 nights in a row. One of his colleagues approached, the thin man with perfect hair from last night. "Austin, this is unacceptable. You need to call building ownership tomorrow and file a formal complaint." "Oh, I will," Austin said, looking directly at me. "Trust me, I will." There was a threat in his voice. The implication was clear. Complain too much, cause too many disruptions, and he'd make sure I lost my job. If only he knew. I entered the apartment and set up by the control panel in the master bedroom. The party continued around me, but the mood was different tonight, more hostile. My presence wasn't just an inconvenience anymore. It was becoming a pattern that reflected poorly on Austin's status as a tenant. "I don't understand why building security can't schedule these things during business hours," said Sarah Kim. "Because they don't respect our time," replied a man I didn't recognize. "To them, we're just rent checks. They don't care about disrupting our lives." The conversation was getting uglier. What had started as mild annoyance was becoming open-class hostility. I worked by the panel for exactly 15 minutes, then emerged to find the group clustered around Austin's dining table where he was showing off a bottle of 1996 Screaming Eagle. "This is a $40,000 bottle," he was saying. "My wine guy in Napa holds it for me." $40,000. More than 3 times what I'd made per week during the years I was paying his tuition. "Austin," said Sarah Kim, "you really need to do something about this security situation. It's affecting the professionalism of your space." "You're absolutely right," Austin said. He looked directly at me. "This can't continue." I was packing my clipboard when one of the younger directors, a cocky-looking man in his late 20s, decided to get involved. "Hey, old-timer," he called out. "You realize this is a private party, right? Important business is being conducted here." I looked up. "I'm just doing my job." Well, maybe you could do it a little faster. Some of us have real work to discuss. Real work, as opposed to what I was doing, which apparently wasn't real. I'll be finished in just a moment, I said calmly. That's what you said last night, Austin interjected. And the night before that. How many moments do you need? The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, sensing that something was about to happen. Look, said the cocky young director, clearly emboldened by the audience. I don't know what your deal is, but you need to understand something. These apartments cost millions of dollars. The people who live here are important. They deserve better service than this. I set down my clipboard and looked at him. Really? Important? I repeated. That's right. Meta executives, people who matter in this city, people who matter. As if the man who'd raised their host, who'd sacrificed everything for his education, who owned the very building they were standing in, as if I didn't matter at all. And you think I don't matter? I asked quietly. Austin stepped forward. I could see him recognizing the danger in this moment. Let's just keep this professional, he said. But the young director was too far gone. Look, no offense, but you're a security guard. You sit at a desk for minimum wage. We're product leaders. We build the future. There's a hierarchy here, and you need to respect it. The room was completely silent now. Even Austin looked uncomfortable with how far this had gone. I nodded slowly. A hierarchy? Exactly. And where do you think I fit in this hierarchy? The question seemed to confuse him. I mean, you're at the bottom. Obviously. That's just how the world works. At the bottom, the man who owned everything they could see, who'd built more wealth than most of them would ever accumulate, who'd created opportunities for thousands of employees across dozens of companies. I was at the bottom. Interesting perspective, I said. Austin was getting nervous now. Look, we're all just trying to have a nice evening here. Of course, I said, I wouldn't want to interfere with important people having important conversations about important things. There was an edge in my voice now, something that made several people look uncomfortable. The cocky director wasn't done, though. You know what your problem is? You've been doing this job so long, you think you're entitled to something, but nobody owes you anything. You check badges. That's what you do. That's all you are. That's all you are. I looked at Austin, my son, the boy I'd carried on my shoulders, taught to ride a bike, driven to Little League practice in our beat-up Civic, the young man whose Stanford graduation was the proudest day of my life. And he said nothing. He stood there and let a stranger reduce his father to nothing more than someone who checks badges. You're right, I said quietly. I do check badges. The director smiled, thinking he'd won. In fact, I continued, I think your host's master bedroom sensor needs attention right now. Austin, would you mind showing me to the panel again? I should probably take a closer look. Austin's face was red with embarrassment. But in front of his colleagues, his investors, his future London team, he couldn't refuse. Fine, he said through clenched teeth, but make it quick. As I walked toward the bedroom, I heard someone whisper, I can't believe he's allowing this. Neither could I. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I stood by the control panel with my tools, hyper-aware that 30 of Silicon Valley's most powerful tech executives were watching from the living room. The humiliation was complete, deliberate, and public. But what they didn't see was me quietly texting Marcus Rivera, now. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Strong, official, unmistakable. SFPD and Building Safety Inspection, came Marcus's authoritative voice through the door. We need to speak with the tenant immediately. Austin's face went white. Nothing kills a meta party faster than police involvement. What the hell, he muttered, walking to the door. Marcus stood in the hallway wearing his official security uniform, flanked by 2 actual SFPD officers I'd arranged through my contacts at City Hall. Behind them stood Rebecca Stein, my attorney, carrying a carbon fiber briefcase. Mr. Austin Langford? Marcus asked formally. Yes, that's me. We need to conduct an emergency inspection of this unit. There have been reports of building code violations and lease infractions. Austin's guests were gathering behind him now, champagne forgotten, all their confidence evaporating. Sarah Kim looked particularly nervous. Meta directors couldn't afford to be associated with any kind of legal trouble. I don't understand, Austin said. What violations? Marcus consulted his clipboard with professional authority. Unauthorized after-hours gatherings, lease violations, and, he paused, looking directly at me as I emerged from the bedroom, harassment of building personnel. The word harassment hung in the air like a blade. That's ridiculous, Austin said. I haven't harassed anyone. Sir, we have multiple witnesses who observed you and your guests verbally abusing a security officer tonight. In this building, we take the treatment of our employees very seriously. I watched my son's face cycle through confusion, anger, and growing panic. His London transfer, his promotion, his entire career trajectory, all of it could be derailed by something like this. There must be some mistake, Sarah Kim interjected, stepping forward. We're all respected professionals here. Marcus looked at her with the flat, unimpressed stare of someone who'd seen too many respected professionals try to talk their way out of consequences. Ma'am, respect is earned through behavior, not job titles. Rebecca Stein stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention. At 67, she had the kind of gravitas that came from 40 years of handling California's biggest real estate deals. Excuse me, she said to Austin. Are you the primary leaseholder of this unit? Yes, Austin said uncertainly. Excellent. Then you're exactly who I need to speak with. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I'm Rebecca Stein representing the building's ownership. We need to discuss your lease terms. Austin looked confused. My lease? Everything's current. I've never missed a payment. Oh, the financial terms aren't the issue, Rebecca said smoothly. The issue is Section 19 of your lease agreement, which specifically prohibits harassment, intimidation, or hostile behavior toward building employees. She pulled out a document and handed it to Austin. This is a formal notice of lease violation. You have 72 hours to respond. Lease violation? Austin's voice was getting higher, more desperate. For what? Talking to a security guard? For calling a human being useless, Rebecca said. For demanding he fix imaginary problems while you and your friends watched and laughed, and for creating a hostile work environment for building staff. The room was completely silent now. Several of Austin's guests were quietly moving toward the door, wanting no part of whatever this was becoming. I watched all of this unfold with a strange sense of calm. After 4 years of humiliation, justice was finally arriving. But I wasn't done yet. Excuse me, I said, stepping forward. Could I see that lease agreement? Rebecca handed me the document, and I made a show of reading it carefully. Austin watched me with growing irritation. You can't even read, he muttered. What are you pretending to understand? That was the moment I'd been waiting for. The final insult, the last straw. I looked up from the document and met my son's eyes. Actually, Austin, I can read quite well. In fact, I wrote this lease. The confusion on his face was absolute. What? I pulled off my work gloves, revealing the $75,000 Patek Philippe on my wrist. Then I reached into my uniform and pulled out my real business card, heavy cotton stock with gold embossing. My name is Victor Langford, I said clearly, projecting my voice so everyone in the room could hear. I'm the chairman and sole owner of Langford Properties. I own this building. I own your lease. I own the company that employs the security staff you've been abusing. I handed him the business card. I also own 41 other buildings across California worth approximately $4.1 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. Austin stared at the card like it was written in a foreign language. That's impossible, he whispered. Marcus stepped forward with a manila folder. Building ownership documents, he announced, handing the papers to Austin. Filed with the City and County of San Francisco. Signed by Victor Langford, dated June 12, 2010. Rebecca pulled out another document, corporate registration for Langford Properties, showing Mr. Langford as sole shareholder. One by one, they laid out the evidence. Bank statements from First Republic Private Bank, property deeds, tax records, an entire financial empire, all bearing the signature of the useless old security guard they'd been mocking. Austin's hands were shaking as he looked through the documents. But your father, I said quietly. The man who worked double shifts on the docks to pay your Stanford tuition. The man who sold everything he owned to cover your mother's medical bills. The man you've been telling people is dead. Sarah Kim gasped. Several people started backing toward the door. You see, Austin, for 4 years, I've been coming to this building every night, not to guard it, but to watch you, to see what kind of man you'd become, to see if the son your mother and I raised still existed somewhere inside the person you've turned into. I gestured around the room. And what I've discovered is that you've become exactly the kind of person you used to hate. The kind of person who judges others by their appearance, who treats service workers like they're invisible, who thinks money makes you better than other people. Austin's face had gone completely pale. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You were so ashamed of where you came from, so desperate to fit in with these people that you erased your own family. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Rebecca, please prepare the will amendment we discussed. The will? Austin's voice was barely a whisper. The $15 million I'd set aside for your inheritance. It's going to charity instead. Organizations that help working families pay for college, medical bills, housing, People like your mother and me before we built all this. Dad, please, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice still calm, but carrying the weight of 4 years of pain. I understand that you fired a pregnant engineer for culture fit. I understand that you've been planning to move to London without even saying goodbye. I understand that you told your colleagues your father was dead because you were ashamed of the man who gave you everything. The room was emptying now. Silicon Valley millionaires don't stick around for family drama that could affect their reputations. Sarah Kim paused at the door. Austin, she said quietly, we'll need to discuss this situation with HR on Monday. And just like that, his promotion, his London transfer, his entire career trajectory, all of it was in jeopardy. I looked at my son, this stranger who wore my name and lived in my building and benefited from my wealth while despising everything I represented. You have 72 hours to decide who you want to be, I said. The man who respects people regardless of their job title, or the man who just lost his father forever. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Austin, your rent is due on the 1st. Don't be late. The next morning I sat in my real office, the penthouse suite of Langford Properties, 40 floors above the Embarcadero. The view was spectacular, all of San Francisco spread out below me like a kingdom I'd built one dock shift at a time. Rebecca Stein was already there, having worked through the night to prepare the legal documents. Marcus Rivera sat across from my desk, still in his security uniform, but now showing the respect due to his actual boss. The will amendment is complete, Rebecca said, sliding the papers across my desk. $15 million redirected to the Clara Langford Foundation for working families. It'll fund college scholarships and medical assistance for families in financial crisis. I signed the documents with the same Montblanc pen I'd used to buy my first building 35 years ago. Clara would have approved. She always said money should help people, not spoil them. The lease violation notice was delivered an hour ago, Marcus reported. Mr. Austin Langford has 72 hours to respond. Legal says if he contests it, we have multiple witnesses to the harassment incident. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dad, please call me. We need to talk. Austin. I showed the message to Rebecca. What do you think? I think, she said carefully, that consequences teach better lessons than lectures ever could. She was right. For 4 years, I'd enabled Austin's behavior by staying silent. I'd absorbed his humiliation, made excuses for his cruelty, told myself that love meant accepting whatever scraps of affection he was willing to give. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Love means caring enough to stop the abuse, even when it hurts. My office phone rang. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Langford, Sarah Kim from Meta is here to see you. She says it's urgent. Interesting. I'd been wondering how long it would take for Meta management to figure out they had a problem. Send her in. Sarah Kim entered my office like she was walking into a courtroom. She'd traded her party dress for a severe business suit, and her face was set in the neutral expression of someone delivering bad news. Mr. Langford, she said, extending her hand. I'm Sarah Kim, managing director at Meta. I remember you from last night, I said. Champagne flute, diamond earrings, people who matter comment. She flinched. Yes, about that. I owe you an apology. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. I'm listening. I had no idea who you were, obviously. And I want to assure you that Meta does not condone the behavior we witnessed last night. Which behavior specifically? The harassment, the disrespectful treatment, the hostile work environment created for building staff. She was being very careful with her words. Legal had clearly briefed her. And Austin? Sarah's pause told me everything I needed to know. Mr. Austin Langford's employment status is under review. His behavior last night violated several company policies regarding professional conduct and respect for service workers. His London transfer has been suspended pending the outcome of our internal investigation. I leaned back in my chair. Miss Kim, I'm curious about something. Last night, when you saw a group of tech executives humiliating a security guard, what went through your mind? She looked uncomfortable. I thought it was inappropriate, but I didn't know how to intervene. Why not? Because, she struggled for words, because everyone else seemed to think it was acceptable. Everyone else was wrong. Yes, she said quietly. They were. I stood and walked to my window, looking down at the street 40 floors below. Tiny people rushing to work, building careers, chasing dreams. All of them someone's child, someone's hope for the future. Miss Kim, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. I don't want my son fired. She looked genuinely shocked. You don't? No. I want him to face consequences for his actions. I want him to understand that behavior has costs, but I don't want him destroyed. I turned back to face her. I want him to have the chance to become the man his mother and I raised him to be. The question is, does Meta want to be part of that education or part of the problem? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. What are you suggesting? Mandatory sensitivity training, 80 hours of community service working with underprivileged families, a formal apology to my entire staff, and most importantly, no promotion, no transfer, and no stock refresh until he demonstrates genuine change. That's very generous. It's not generous, I said. It's fatherly. She nodded slowly. I think we can work with that. After Sarah left, I sat alone in my office, looking at the will amendment on my desk. $15 million gone with a signature. But for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I'd done something that would make Clara proud. My phone rang. Austin's number. I let it ring. Then I picked up. Hello, Austin. Dad. His voice was broken. Defeated. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. I lost everything. My promotion, my transfer, probably my job. No, I said quietly. You lost your arrogance. Your job, your career, your future, those are still yours to earn back. Can we talk, please? I looked at Clara's photograph on my desk. She was smiling the way she used to when Austin was little and would fall down and come running to us for comfort. Yes, I said. We can talk, but not as your father talking to his successful son, as two men figuring out what respect actually means. I understand. Do you? Because yesterday you thought respect was something you got from having money and a fancy job title. But real respect, the kind your mother and I tried to teach you, that's something you give to other people, especially the ones who can't do anything for you in return. There was a long pause. I have a lot to learn. Yes, I said, you do. But learning is better than staying ignorant. Where do we start? I smiled for the first time in months. We start with you coming home for dinner. And we start with you meeting your real father. The story broke in the San Francisco Chronicle 3 days later. Silicon Valley VP humiliates billionaire dad, read the headline above a photo of Austin walking into Meta with his head down. Someone at the party had recorded the entire confrontation on their phone. The video went viral within hours. Austin calling me useless, his colleagues laughing as I stood by the control panel. Then the moment of revelation when I revealed my true identity. The internet's reaction was swift and merciless. Twitter exploded with #RespectSecurityGuard hashtags. TikTok users created mashups of the audio with footage of security guards, janitors, and service workers around the city. The comment sections were filled with people sharing their own stories of being dismissed or humiliated because of their jobs. But it was LinkedIn that really did the damage. Professional contacts started distancing themselves from Austin. Former Stanford classmates posted about the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Several Meta clients privately reached out to Sarah Kim, expressing concerns about the firm's culture and values. Austin's dating life collapsed overnight. His girlfriend, a fashion influencer named Olivia, broke up with him via text. Can't be associated with this kind of PR disaster. Sorry. The Marina penthouse became a prison. Paparazzi camped outside the building, hoping to get photos of the tech brat who'd humiliated his own father. The doorman, Carlos, found himself turning away reporters daily. But the real consequences were professional. Meta's internal investigation moved quickly. The company couldn't afford to look like they tolerated workplace harassment or class discrimination. Austin was suspended without pay pending completion of mandatory training programs. The London transfer was permanently cancelled. Sarah Kim explained it bluntly in their meeting. The European team doesn't want the liability. Your reputation precedes you now. Worse, his professional network started evaporating. Tech is relationship-driven, built on trust and reputation. When your reputation becomes the guy who treats security guards like dirt, client development becomes impossible. 3 former colleagues unfriended him on LinkedIn. 2 Stanford Business School classmates stopped returning his calls. A mentorship opportunity with Sequoia was quietly withdrawn. The social consequences were equally devastating. Austin had built his adult identity around being accepted by San Francisco's tech elite. Yacht club memberships, invite-only gala tables, weekend houses in St. Helena, all of that required social capital that was now worthless. His invitation to the Meta holiday party was rescinded. The young founders group he'd belonged to for 6 years suddenly had membership capacity issues. Even his Equinox membership became awkward when other members started recognizing him from the news coverage. But perhaps the most painful consequence was the one he hadn't expected, the loss of his own self-image. For years, Austin had told himself that his success was purely merit-based. He'd earned his Stanford MBA, earned his meta position, earned his 8-figure net worth through hard work and intelligence. The revelation that his father owned the building where he worked, that the security guard he'd mocked was worth more than every person at that party combined, shattered that narrative completely. Everything he thought he knew about himself was built on a lie. I watched all of this unfold from my office, tracking the news coverage, monitoring the social media reaction, receiving updates from Marcus about the reporters trying to access our buildings. Part of me felt satisfaction. Justice finally served. The son who'd spent 4 years humiliating his father was now experiencing public humiliation himself. But mostly, I felt sad, because this could have all been avoided if Austin had simply remembered the values Clara and I had tried to teach him, if he'd remembered that every person deserves basic dignity regardless of their job title or social status. On Thursday morning, Rebecca Stein brought me a stack of legal documents, formal apology letters, she explained, to you, to Marcus Rivera, to the security team, to Meta Management. His attorney drafted them. I read through Austin's letter to me. It was 4 pages long, detailed, and seemed genuine. He acknowledged specific behaviors, accepted responsibility, and outlined concrete steps he was taking to change. He's also enrolled in anger management and empathy training, Rebecca added. Plus 80 hours of community service at a food bank. Self-imposed. He's trying to get ahead of any potential legal action. I set the letters aside. Has he called? Every day. Marcus says he's been coming to the lobby hoping to see you. I looked out my window at one hackerway across the bay. Somewhere in there, my son was probably sitting at his desk, wondering if his career was salvageable, wondering if his father would ever forgive him. The answer to both questions was the same. It depended entirely on what he did next. 2 months later, Austin and I met for dinner. Not at some expensive San Francisco restaurant where we might be recognized, but at a small taqueria in Daly City, 3 blocks from the house where he grew up. He looked different, thinner, older, humbled. The arrogance that had defined him for years was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in a long time, uncertainty. I've been coming here every day, he said, gesturing around the taqueria, trying to remember who I used to be before I became that person. I ordered carnitas, the way I'd learned to eat them during the years when we couldn't afford anything else. Do you remember Mrs. Delgado? I asked. Austin looked confused. Our neighbor? She was a cleaner at the airport. Worked double shifts to put her son through community college. You used to help her carry groceries up the stairs. I remember. What happened to that kid? The one who saw a person struggling and decided to help. Austin stared at his untouched burrito. I don't know. I think I got scared. Scared of what? Of being seen as ordinary. Of people knowing where I really came from. He looked up at me. I was ashamed, Dad. Ashamed of our house, our car, your jobs. And instead of being proud of how hard you worked, I ran away from it. I nodded. And now? Now I'm ashamed of who I became. I watch that video of myself and I don't recognize the person talking. I see this entitled stranger being cruel to his own father and I want to disappear. Good, I said. Shame can be useful if it teaches you something. Austin pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote this for you. Not because my lawyer told me to, not because Meta required it, because I needed to say it. I read his handwritten letter. It was simple, direct, and real in a way Austin's words hadn't been for years. The inheritance, he said quietly. I heard about the foundation. Mom would have loved that. Yeah. His voice broke slightly. She would have. I reached across the table and put my hand on his. Austin, you're not the person in that video anymore, but you're also not the person you were at 8 years old. You get to choose who you become next. He nodded. I want to be someone Mom would be proud of. Then be that person starting now. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 men rebuilding a relationship that had almost been destroyed by pride and shame. Finally, Austin spoke. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Would you teach me how to be better? I smiled for the first time in years. Son, I thought you'd never ask.